My name's Emma 32, and I just bought my dream lake house in Willow Creek. Picture quiet mornings, coffee on a hand-carved dock, and a fresh start with my husband Nathan. I poured my heart into this place, imagining our life rooted here. But at dinner, Nathan dropped a bomb. His ex-wife Clara and their son Liam are moving in. Just like that, my dream felt stolen. Have you ever had your plans flipped upside down? I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Like and subscribe to follow what happens next. I sat at the kitchen table, the weight of Nathan's words sinking in like damp wood. The lake house deed was still on the counter, ink fresh from yesterday's signing. I traced my finger over the address, Willow Creek Lane, trying to anchor myself. How could he just decide his ex-wife and son were moving in? We'd talked about this place for months, planned every detail from the sage green shutters to the wildflower garden I wanted out back. I thought we were building something ours. Now it felt like I was the one intruding. I replayed last night's dinner in my head. Nathan had leaned back in his chair, fork in hand, and said it so casually, like he was mentioning a grocery list. Claire needs a place, and Liam's my kid. They're coming to stay. No discussion, no glance my way, to see how I'd take it. I'd frozen my throat tight and just nodded. Why didn't I say something I'd spent years learning to speak up, promising myself I wouldn't shrink again? But there I was, silent, letting the moment slip. I thought back to our wedding 2 years ago under a July sky. Nathan had held my hands, his eyes steady, promising a life we'd shape together. We'd laughed about our quirks, like my obsession with vintage lamps, or his habit of leaving socks everywhere. He'd said he wanted a home with me, not just a house. I believed him. Had I missed something? Was this always lurking, this shadow of his past life with Clara? I pushed my chair back and walked to his office, needing answers. His desk was a mess of papers, receipts, and coffee mugs. I hesitated, then opened a drawer, telling myself I was just looking for moving plans. Instead, I found a photo tucked under a notebook. Nathan and Clara younger, laughing at some beach. Her arm was around his waist, his smile wide. My chest tightened. I shoved it back, slamming the drawer. Was he still tied to her? Did he want this arrangement more than he let on? I found him in the living room, scrolling on his phone. My hands shook, but I kept my voice even. Nathan, can we talk about Clara and Liam moving in? He didn't look up right away, just sighed like I was nagging him. What's there to talk about? They need help. It's temporary. Temporary. The word felt hollow. You didn't ask me, I said louder than I meant. This is our house, my house. I bought it. He finally met my eyes, but his were hard. Emma, don't make this a thing. Clara's been through enough, and Liam deserves a stable home. You're my wife. You should get that. I wanted to scream that I deserved a say, that this wasn't about Clara's struggles or Liam's needs. It was about us, about the promises we made. But his tone, that edge of dismissal, stopped me. I'd heard it before in smaller moments, when he'd brush off my ideas for the house or laugh off my worries about his late nights at work. I'd let those slide, telling myself it was just marriage, just compromise. But this was different. I turned away, my throat burning, and went to the porch. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the lake nearby. I hugged my knees, staring at the street where movers would soon bring our boxes. My dream was in those boxes, packed in bubble wrap and labeled in my handwriting. Could I share it with Clara, with her history woven into Nathan's life? I loved him, but love wasn't supposed to feel like this, like I was fighting for a place in my own story. Inside, Nathan turned on the TV, the sound muffled through the screen door. He wasn't coming out to check on me. I wiped my eyes, angry at myself for crying. I wasn't going to let this unravel me, not yet. But as I sat there, The photo of him and Clara burned in my mind, and I wondered what else I didn't know about the man I married. The porch creaked under my weight as I stood brushing off the chill that had settled into my bones. I couldn't stay out here forever stewing in my own head. I needed to move to do something, even if it was just packing boxes to keep my hands busy. Inside, Nathan was still glued to the TV, some sports game blaring. I grabbed a cardboard box from the hallway and started wrapping dishes, each clink of ceramic grounding me a little. But every plate I packed felt like I was sealing away my own voice, burying it under bubble wrap. My sister Hannah showed up around noon, her car crunching gravel in the driveway. She'd always had a sixth sense for when I was spiraling. She walked in her hair pulled back in a messy bun and took one look at my face. "Okay, Spill," she said, plopping onto the couch. I hesitated, glancing at Nathan, who hadn't even acknowledged her arrival. I led her to the kitchen, where the half-packed boxes sat like silent witnesses. I told her everything, my voice low but shaking. Nathan's announcement, his dismissal when I tried to talk the photo I'd found. Hannah's eyes narrowed, her fingers tapping the counter. "He's got some nerve," she said. "This is your house, Emma. You paid for it. Why's he acting like Clara's calling the shots?" Her words were a lifeline, pulling me out of the fog. But they also scared me. Confronting Nathan again felt like stepping into a storm I wasn't ready for. "I don't know how to fight this," I admitted. "What if I push too hard and he pulls away?" Hannah leaned forward, her voice firm. "You're not the one who should be bending. He needs to hear you." I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. I'd seen Nathan's face when he talked about Liam, the softness in his eyes. Was I the bad guy for wanting my home to myself? Hannah hugged me before she left, promising to check in tomorrow. Her support was a spark, but it didn't erase the ache. The rest of the day I threw myself into packing taping boxes until my fingers ached. Nathan wandered in at one point, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Clara was asking about the lake house, he said, like it was nothing. She loves the idea of a big porch for Liam to play on. I froze, a glass in my hand. He was already planning their life there, weaving Clara's wants into our future. "What about what I love?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He shrugged. "We'll figure it out when we're all there." All there. The words landed like a slap. I needed air. I grabbed my jacket and walked to the lake, a short trail from our rental. The water was still reflecting pines and a graying sky. I sat on a rock, the cold seeping through my jeans. This lake was why I'd chosen the house, its quiet promise of peace. I'd imagined Nathan and me here, maybe with kids of our own someday. But now Clara's shadow loomed, her presence already reshaping my plans. Could I live like this, sharing my dream with a woman who'd once shared Nathan's life? Back home, I found Nathan in the garage, sorting tools for the move. I tried again, softer this time. "Nathan, can we talk about how this is making me feel?" He sighed, setting down a wrench. "Emma, it's not a big deal. They'll be here in a week and we'll sort it out." A week. My heart sank. I'd thought I had more time to wrap my head around this, to find a way to make it work. "A week," I repeated, my voice cracking. He nodded like it was just logistics. "Yeah, Clara's already packing." I stood there, the garage smelling of oil and dust, feeling like the ground was shifting under me. A week until my life changed, until my house wasn't mine anymore. I turned and walked back inside, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. Anger, fear, betrayal, all tangled together. As I closed the door, I heard Nathan start the car, probably heading to the store or to call Clara. I was alone again, and the silence was louder than ever. The moving truck rumbled up Willow Creek Lane at dawn, its headlights cutting through the mist. I stood on the lake house porch, arms crossed, watching Clara's car pull in behind it. She stepped out, her hair tied back already, directing the movers like she owned the place. Liam trailed her, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, his eyes darting between the house and me. I forced a smile, but my stomach churned. This was my home. My dream. And now it felt like I was the guest. Inside, Clara wasted no time. She started unpacking in the kitchen, rearranging my mugs to make room for her own. "These shelves are perfect," she said, not even glancing at me. I bit my lip, gripping a box of my cookbooks. I wanted to tell her to stop, to leave my space alone, but Nathan was already helping Liam carry a suitcase upstairs. I was outnumbered before the day began. I tried to connect with Liam, hoping it might ease the tension. "Hey, want to check out the lake later?" I asked, kneeling to his level. He nodded shyly, but Clara cut in. "I'll take him, Emma. He's more comfortable with me." Her tone was polite, but it sliced through me. I stood, brushing my hands on my jeans, and walked to the living room, my face burning. She wasn't just moving in, she was staking a claim. By afternoon, the house was a mess of boxes and furniture. Clara's stuff spilled everywhere, her lamps clashing with my carefully chosen decor. I found Nathan in the dining room, assembling a chair for Liam's desk. "Can we talk?" I said, keeping my voice low. He didn't stop screwing in bolts. "Emma, I'm busy. Can it wait?" I swallowed hard. "No, it can't. Clara's acting like this is her house. I feel like I don't belong." He set the screwdriver down, his jaw tight. "She's just settling in. You're making it harder than it needs to be. They're family. You need to step up." Step up. The words hit like a punch. I'd been stepping up, hadn't I? I'd bought this house, poured my savings into it, planned every corner of it for us. I turned away, my eyes stinging, and retreated to the guest room. The bed was bare, the walls empty, but it was the only place that didn't feel invaded. I sank onto the floor, my back against the wall, and let the tears come. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I'd imagined laughter here, not this suffocating weight. I pulled myself together when I heard footsteps. Clara was in the hallway, her voice carrying as she talked to Liam. "We'll make this place our own, sweetie. Our own." I clenched my fists, anger bubbling up. She wasn't just settling in. She was erasing me. I wanted to storm out and tell her to leave, but the thought of Nathan's disappointed face stopped me. He'd already chosen his side, hadn't he? I slipped into the kitchen to grab water, hoping to avoid her. But there on the counter was a note in Clara's neat handwriting. "Please keep the counters clear for meal prep." Thanks. It was so polite, so reasonable, but it felt like a slap. She was setting rules in my house. I crumpled the note, my hands shaking, and tossed it in the trash. I couldn't keep swallowing this. Something had to give, but I didn't know how to fight without losing everything. The crumpled note in the trash didn't erase the sting. I stood in the kitchen, the hum of the fridge filling the silence, my pulse loud in my ears. Clara's boxes were stacked against the wall, her name scrawled in marker like a claim on my space. I wanted to rip them open to prove this was still mine, but I just gripped the counter, my knuckles white. Outside, Liam's laughter drifted in as he played with Nathan on the lawn. Their ease, their bond, made me feel like an outsider in my own life. I tried to keep busy unpacking my books in the study, but Clara's presence seeped into everything. She'd swapped my curtains for gaudy floral ones, claiming they were cozier. I found her shoes by the front door, lined up next to Nathan's, like she'd always been here. Each small change felt like a deliberate cut, carving away my place. I carried a stack of novels to the shelf, but my hands shook so badly, one slipped thudding to the floor. I left it there too, tired to bend down. Hannah called that evening, her voice a lifeline through the phone. I curled up on the guest room floor, whispering so no one would hear. "She's taking over, Hannah. My curtains, my kitchen, my husband." She was furious, her words sharp. "You need to draw a line, Emma. This isn't fair. I knew she was right, but the thought of another fight with Nathan made my chest tight. What if he chooses them? I asked, my voice breaking. Hannah didn't answer right away, and that silence scared me more than anything. Dinner was worse. Clara cooked, filling the house with the smell of garlic and herbs. She set the table chatting with Nathan about Liam's school, their voices weaving a history I wasn't part of. I pushed food around my plate, barely eating. Nathan didn't notice, but Clara did. She smiled, too sweet, and said, "Emma, you're so quiet. Everything okay?" I forced a nod, my throat too tight to speak. Liam looked at me, his eyes wide, and I felt a pang of guilt. He was just a kid caught in this mess, but I couldn't reach him through the wall Clara had built. After dinner, I cleared the table, needing something to do. In the living room, Clara was showing Nathan a drawing Liam had made a house by a lake with 3 stick figures labeled Dad, Mom, and Me. My name was nowhere. I froze the plates, heavy in my hands. Nathan smiled at the picture, ruffling Liam's hair. "That's great, buddy," he said. I wanted to scream that this was my house, my life, but the words wouldn't come. I set the plates in the sink, my hands trembling. Later, I slipped outside to the back porch, the night air cool against my skin. The lake was a dark mirror, reflecting nothing but my own confusion. I sat on the steps, hugging my knees, and let the anger rise. Clara's voice echoed in my head, her casual ownership of my space, Nathan's blind loyalty to her. I'd given everything for this house for him, and it wasn't enough. I thought of Hannah's advice, but the idea of confronting them felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. As I stood to go inside, I spotted something on the coffee table through the window. A stack of papers, bank statements with Clara's name. They weren't mine, weren't Nathan's. My heart raced as I squinted, catching numbers that didn't add up, withdrawals too large for someone just settling in. What was she doing? I stepped back, my breath shallow, the weight of it all pressing down. This wasn't just about space or curtains. Something bigger was unraveling, and I was caught in the middle alone. Those bank statements haunted me all night. I barely slept, my mind racing with questions about Clara's intentions. By morning, the house was quiet, Nathan already out with Liam for a fishing trip. Clara was in the kitchen, humming as she sliced fruit, her ease, a stark contrast to the knot in my chest. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I grabbed the statements from the coffee table, my hands steady, despite the tremor in my gut, and marched to her. "Clara, we need to talk about these," I said, holding up the papers. She didn't flinch, just set the knife down and wiped her hands on a towel. "What, Emma? Those are private." Her voice was calm, but her eyes narrowed. I pushed forward, my voice low but firm. "They show huge withdrawals." "Are you using Nathan's money? This is my house. I deserve to know." For a moment, she just stared. Then she laughed, sharp and cold. "You think you're in charge here? Nathan's helping me because I'm family. You're just the one who paid for the address." Her words cut deeper than I expected, but I didn't back down. "If you're in debt, that's not our problem. You can't just move in and expect us to fix it." Clara stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Nathan owes me Emma. After he left me and Liam, he promised to make it right. This house, it's as much mine as yours." I felt the air leave my lungs. Promised my house, the one I'd scraped every penny for, wasn't hers to claim. I turned and stormed out, clutching the papers, my heart pounding. I found Nathan in the driveway when he got back, Liam running off to play. I didn't wait for pleasantries. "Did you know Clara's in debt?" I asked, thrusting the statements at him. "She says you're helping her, that you owe her this house." His face tightened, but he didn't take the papers. "Emma, calm down. Clara's had a rough time. I've sent her some money, yeah, but it's not what you think. Not what I think. I stepped closer, my voice shaking. You've been sending her money behind my back. How long, Nathan? How much? He rubbed his neck, avoiding my eyes. It's just temporary to get her on her feet. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact. Overreact? I laughed, bitter and raw. This is our marriage, Nathan. You lied to me. You let her think she has a claim to my house. He shook his head, his voice hard. It's not just your house, Emma. Liam's my son. They're my responsibility. The words landed like a slap tearing open a wound I didn't know was there. My house, my dream reduced to a shared obligation. I walked away, my vision blurring, and ended up at a neighborhood barbecue Margaret had invited us to. I went to escape to breathe, but Clara was there, chatting with neighbors like she belonged. I stood by the grill, forcing smiles when I heard her voice carry over the crowd. This lake house is perfect for our family, she said, her arm around Liam. Nathan and I always wanted a place like this. Our family. The words echoed, each one a nail in my chest. Neighbors glanced at me, their pity sharp and humiliating. I slipped into Margaret's house to steady myself, my hands gripping the bathroom sink. The mirror showed a woman I barely recognized, eyes, red jaw, tight. Clara was rewriting my life in front of everyone, and Nathan was letting her. I thought of the deed, my name alone on it, and wondered if it even mattered. As I splashed water on my face, a memory hit me, a box in the attic Nathan had brought from his old place. I'd never looked inside, but now I needed to know what else he was hiding. I left the barbecue, my steps unsteady, and climbed to the attic when I got home. The air was thick with dust, the single bulb flickering as I found Nathan's box tucked behind old camping gear. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Clara's handwriting stared back at me, her words to Nathan from years ago, full of love and promises. One dated after their divorce said, "You'll always come back to us." My stomach twisted. Had he kept these because he still felt something? I sank to the floor, the letters spilling around me, each one a piece of a life I'd never been part of. I wanted to burn them to erase her from our story, but they were proof of a truth I'd been dodging. Nathan's heart wasn't fully mine. I shoved the letters back my chest, heaving, and went downstairs. He was in the den, watching TV, oblivious to the storm inside me. I didn't wait for the right moment. "Nathan, I found your letters from Clara," I said, my voice raw. He turned, his face paling. "What were you doing in my stuff?" he snapped, standing. "Those are private." "Private?" I laughed, the sound jagged. "Private like the money you're giving her? Like the way she's claiming my house? I'm your wife. Nathan. Why am I the last to know who you really are?" He stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. "You don't get it, Emma. I left Clara, but I can't abandon Liam. Or her. They're my past, my guilt. You knew I had a kid when you married me." His words were a blade cutting through every hope I'd clung to. I'd known about Liam, loved the idea of being his stepmom, but this was Clara's shadow, swallowing our future. "You're choosing them over me," I said, tears spilling. "You're letting her take everything I built." He didn't deny it. Instead, he turned away, running a hand through his hair. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We'll work it out." "Work it out!" I wanted to scream that there was no we when he kept secrets, when he let Clara parade around like she belonged here. But my voice broke, and I stormed out, slamming the bedroom door. I sank onto the bed, my body shaking, the fight draining out of me. I heard Clara's car pull in, her laughter mixing with Liam's as they came inside. The normalcy of it crushed me. They were living their life while mine was unraveling. I grabbed my phone, ready to call Hannah, but stopped. What could she say that would fix this? I was alone in this house. My house surrounded by people who didn't see me. Then Liam knocked, his small voice muffled through the door. "Emma, are you mad at me?" My heart cracked. He was innocent, caught in this mess, but his question tore at me. I opened the door, forcing a smile. But before I could answer, Clara called him downstairs. I shut the door again, leaning against it, my breath ragged. The walls felt like they were closing in every corner of this place, tainted by betrayal. I didn't know how to keep going, not when everything I'd fought for was slipping through my fingers. Liam's small voice still echoed in my head as I sat on the bed, the door shut against the world downstairs. His question wasn't just a kid's worry. It was a mirror showing me how far I'd let this go. I'd been shrinking, letting Clara's presence and Nathan's choices chip away at me. But that moment, his innocent eyes searching mine, lit something inside. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for myself, for the life I'd earned. I wiped my face, stood, and took a deep breath. No more hiding. I started small, reclaiming what I could. I went to the study where Clara's clutter had invaded my desk. With steady hands, I packed her things into a box and moved them to the hallway. Then I bought a lock for the study door at the hardware store, installing it myself that afternoon. The click of the bolt felt like a promise this space was mine. I sat at my desk, surrounded by my books, and opened a notebook. I started writing, pouring out every hurt, every fear, every moment I'd swallowed my voice. The words flowed raw and unfiltered, and with each line I felt stronger, like I was stitching myself back together. I knew I couldn't stop there. Clara had to go, and Nathan needed to hear me, really hear me. I found him in the backyard, tossing a ball with Liam. I waited until Liam ran inside, then approached, my voice calm but firm. "Nathan, we need to talk. Clara can't stay here. This is our home, not hers." He frowned, tossing the ball between his hands. "Emma, we've been over this. She's got nowhere else." I shook my head, standing taller. "That's not my problem. I bought this house for us. If you want to help her do it somewhere else..." He stared at me, surprised, like he hadn't expected me to push back. "You're being unreasonable," he said, but his voice lacked the edge it had before. I didn't flinch. "No, I'm being clear. I'm your wife. This is my line." I walked away, my heart racing, but my steps steady. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was steering my own story. That evening, I called Rebecca, the lawyer I'd met at the barbecue. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in town. Over steaming mugs, I laid out everything: Clara's bank statements, Nathan's secret payments, the way she'd claimed the house. Rebecca listened, her pen scratching notes. "The deed's in your name, Emma," she said. "That's your leverage. But we need to check Nathan's contributions to Clara. If he's been funneling money, we can argue it's marital property misuse." Her words were a lifeline, practical and sharp. I nodded, feeling a spark of control. "What's next?" I asked. She smiled. "We start digging. And you keep setting boundaries." I left the meeting with a plan, my mind buzzing. For so long, I'd felt like a passenger in my own life, but now I was taking the wheel. I wasn't sure what Nathan would do or how Clara would react, but I was done waiting for them to decide my place. As I drove back to the lake house, the water glinting under the setting sun, I felt a quiet strength growing like the roots of the pines around me. This was just the beginning. Driving back from the coffee shop, I felt the lake's pull, its calm surface, a contrast to the fire in my chest. Rebecca's words echoed: leverage boundaries, digging. I wasn't just reclaiming a house, I was reclaiming me. At home, Clara was in the living room flipping through a magazine like she owned the place. I didn't avoid her this time. "Clara," I said, my voice steady, Stop rearranging my things. This is my home. Respect that. She looked up, her smile tight. I'm just making it comfortable for Liam. I didn't waver. Then do it in your own space, not here. She huffed, tossing the magazine down, but didn't argue. I walked away, my pulse steady, and headed to the garage. Hannah was waiting her car, idling in the driveway. I'd texted her to come over, needing her sharp mind. We sat on folding chairs, surrounded by unpacked tools, and I showed her Clara's bank statements. Look at these withdrawals, I said, pointing to the numbers. They're too big for someone just settling in. Hannah's eyes widened. She's playing him. We need to trace where this money's going. We spent hours cross-referencing names and dates using my laptop to search public records. Hannah found a mutual friend, Greg, who'd lent Clara money last year, never repaid. I called him, my voice calm but direct. Greg, did Clara ever mention needing funds for a house? He hesitated, then spilled. She said Nathan was buying her a place by the lake. I thought you knew. My stomach dropped, but I thanked him and hung up. Clara wasn't just in debt. She was building a lie, using Nathan's guilt to stake a claim on my life. I needed Nathan to see this, but he was still on the fence. That night, I found him in the kitchen washing dishes. We need to talk about Clara's finances, I said, laying out the statements and Greg's story. She's been telling people you're buying her a house. This isn't just help, Nathan. It's manipulation. He dried his hands, his face torn. She wouldn't do that. Liam needs her stable. I stepped closer, my voice firm but quiet. What about us? What about the life we planned? I'm not sharing my home with someone who lies. He didn't answer, just stared at the sink. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the pull of his son against the truth about Clara. It wasn't enough, not yet, but I wasn't backing down. The next morning, I called Margaret, the neighbor who'd rallied support before. I need help restoring the house, I told her. She didn't hesitate, rounding up a crew of neighbors for a painting day. We covered Clara's garish walls with my chosen colors, soft blues and creams, each stroke a declaration. Liam watched curious, and I handed him a brush. Want to help? I asked. He nodded, smiling, and for a moment, I saw a bridge between us. As the sun set, the house looked like mine again, its warmth seeping back. I stood on the porch, paint flecks on my hands, when Rebecca texted, "Found something." Clara forged Nathan's signature on a loan application. Meet tomorrow. My breath caught. This was bigger than I'd thought, a concrete betrayal I could use. I looked out at the lake, its ripples catching the last light, and felt a quiet resolve settle in. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for the woman I'd forgotten how to be. I turned back to the house, my house, and locked the door behind me, the sound sharp and final in the evening air. The lock's click still rang in my ears as I woke the next morning, the house quiet except for the soft creak of floorboards. Clara's car was gone when I checked the driveway, a small relief, but the weight of Rebecca's text about the forged loan lingered. I'd laid down my line, and now the consequences were rolling in. I brewed coffee, the aroma sharp, and stood by the window watching mist curl over the lake. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't sure what came next. Clara returned by noon, her face tight as she carried grocery bags inside. Nathan followed his eyes, avoiding mine. I'd shown him the forgery evidence last night, and though he hadn't argued, his silence felt heavy. I found Clara in the kitchen unpacking. "You need to leave," I said, my voice even. "The loan forgery changes everything." She froze a jar of sauce in her hand, then set it down slowly. "You're making a mistake, Emma," she said, her tone low. "Nathan won't let you do this to Liam." She didn't deny, the forgery didn't even blink. Her confidence shook me, but I held my ground. This isn't about Liam. It's about you crossing a line." She left the kitchen without another word, but the air felt charged like a storm waiting to break. Nathan was in the den sorting Liam's school books. I approached, ready to push further, but he spoke first. "I talked to Clara," he said. His voice strained. "She's leaving, but I don't know how to tell Liam. He's just a kid, Emma." His words carried guilt, but they weren't an apology. I knotted my throat tight. "I'm not trying to hurt him," I said, "but we can't keep living like this." He looked away. His jaw set, and I saw the fracture between us widen. By evening, word had spread. Margaret called, her voice hushed. "Claire's has been telling folks you're kicking her out. Some neighbors think you're being harsh on Liam." I gripped the phone, my stomach sinking. I'd expected pushback, but not this. At the market later, I felt eyes on me, whispers trailing as I pushed my cart. Mrs. Larson, who'd helped paint the house, gave me a curt nod instead of her usual smile. The community I'd leaned on was splitting, and I was the one on trial. I came home to find Clara packing her movements sharp, deliberate. Liam sat on the couch, his dinosaur toy clutched tight, his eyes red. My heart twisted. I wanted to kneel beside him to explain, but Clara's glare stopped me. "You happy now?" she said, zipping a suitcase. "You got what you wanted." Her words were venom, but it was Liam's quiet sniffle that cut deepest. I turned away, retreating to the study, my locked sanctuary. I sank into the chair, staring at the journal I'd started. My strength was costing me, and I wasn't sure I'd measured the price right. The study door stayed locked, but the quiet didn't shield me from the weight outside. Clara's packing echoed through the house, each thud of a box a reminder of the line I'd drawn. I sat at my desk, the journal open but untouched, my pen heavy in my hand. I'd wanted control, but now the cost was staring me in the face. Liam's tear-streaked cheeks, Nathan's distant gaze, the neighbor's whispers. I pressed my palms to my eyes, willing the ache in my chest to ease, but it only grew. Downstairs, the front door opened, and I heard Clara's voice, sharp but low, talking to Nathan. I cracked the study door, catching fragments. "You're letting her ruin us," she said. Her words clipped. Nathan's response was softer, too quiet to make out, but his tone carried defeat. I shut the door, my breath shallow. He wasn't fighting for me, not really. He was caught torn between his guilt and the truth I'd forced him to face. I ventured out later, needing air. The living room was empty, but a folded letter sat on the coffee table, Clara's handwriting scrawled across it. My name was on the front. I hesitated, then opened it, my fingers cold. "You think you've won, it read, but you've only stolen what's mine. Nathan will never be yours, not fully. Enjoy your empty house." The spite dripped from every word, but it was the truth in them that stung. I tore the letter in half, then again, and let the pieces fall into the trash. They didn't burn away the doubt she'd planted. Liam was in the backyard, kicking a ball alone. I watched from the window, his small frame hunched, the dinosaur toy, abandoned on the grass. I wanted to go to him to say something that would soften this, but what words could fix a child's confusion? My actions had pushed Clara out, but they'd left him adrift, and that guilt settled like damp earth in my bones. I turned away, unable to bear it. Nathan found me in the kitchen, his eyes tired. "Clara's staying at a motel," he said, leaning against the counter. "She's looking for a place. I'm trying, Emma, but this is hard." Trying. The word felt like a half measure, not enough to bridge the gap between us. "What about us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you trying for us?" He looked down, his silence louder than any answer. I knotted my throat tight and walked past him, the space between us vast. I went to the lake, the water still under a gray sky. I sat on a bench, the wood rough under my hands, and stared at the horizon. I'd fought for my home, but it didn't feel like victory. Clara was leaving, but her shadow lingered, and Nathan's indecision carved a hollow in me. The neighbor's judgment, Liam's pain, the letter's venom, they all pressed down heavy and unyielding. I'd taken a stand, but now I was standing alone, and the quiet was deafening. The lake was a sheet of glass that morning, its edges kissed by early light. I stood on the porch, a mug of tea warming my hands, and let the quiet settle over me. Clara was gone. Her absence, a strange relief, but the house still carried echoes of the storm. Nathan was inside, moving slower these days, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. I'd fought for this place for us, and now I was learning what victory really cost. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of peace. I started redecorating small touches to make the house mine again. I hung a canvas in the hallway, a watercolor of wildflowers I'd painted years ago, its colors soft against the fresh paint. In the dining room, I set out a tablecloth my grandmother had sewn, its stitches uneven but full of love. Each choice felt like a step back to myself, a way to root this place in who I was, not who I'd been forced to become. I moved with purpose, my hands steady, my heart a little lighter. Margaret stopped by, her arms full of casseroles from the neighbors. "We're proud of you," she said, her eyes crinkling. "You stood your ground." I smiled, taking the dishes, but her words sank deep. The community's warmth was back, not all of it, but enough to feel like home again. We sat on the porch, sipping lemonade, and she told me stories of her own battles, times she'd had to fight for her place. Her voice was steady, her wisdom an anchor, and I realized I wasn't alone in this kind of struggle. Nathan surprised me that afternoon. He'd signed up for a counseling session, just one, but it was a start. We sat in the living room, the therapist on a laptop screen, and he spoke first. "I let Clara lean on me too long," he said, his voice rough. "I didn't see how it hurt you, Emma." I listened, my hands folded, feeling the truth in his words, but not ready to fully trust them. It wasn't a fix, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall between us, a chance to rebuild. Later, I walked to the lake alone, the grass soft under my boots. I sat on a fallen log, the water lapping gently, and let my mind wander. I thought of the girl I'd been at 20, full of dreams but quick to bend for others. I'd lost her somewhere in compromises and silences, but I was finding her again. The lake held no answers, but its stillness was enough a mirror for the quiet strength growing inside me. I breathed slow, the air cool, and felt the world pause just for a moment. The log by the lake felt like a friend, now its rough bark familiar under my hands. I stayed there as the sun climbed its light threading gold through the pines. Liam's laughter broke the quiet, faint but clear, from the house. He was visiting for the weekend, a new rhythm we were building. I stood brushing dirt from my jeans and walked back, my steps slow but sure. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was choosing what to carry forward. Inside, Liam was sprawled on the rug, building a tower of blocks. I sat beside him cross-legged and added a piece, his small grin warming me. "Can we make it taller?" he asked, his voice bright. I nodded, and we worked together, the clack of wood, a soft music. Nathan watched from the couch, his eyes softer than they'd been in months. He'd cut off Clara's financial ties last week. A quiet choice that spoke louder than words. "I'm trying, Emma," he'd said. And I believed him, not fully, but enough to keep going. I baked cookies with Liam that afternoon, the kitchen smelling of vanilla and sugar. He smeared flour on his nose, giggling, and I laughed, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in too long. These moments weren't perfect, but they were ours. A fragile bridge between the chaos and whatever came next. I wasn't his mom, and I didn't need to be. I was Emma, and that was enough for now. Clara's letter came in the mail, a single page asking to return for Liam's sake. I found Nathan in the garage holding it, his face unreadable. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice low. I took the letter, my fingers steady, and read her words. They didn't sting anymore. They were just ink, not truth. "She can't come back," I said, meeting his eyes. "This is our home." He nodded, folding the letter away, and I saw something shift in him, a choice made. We burned it in the fire pit that night, the flames curling around her words until they were ash. I went to the dock before bed, the stars sharp above the lake. I knelt and traced my fingers over the wood, finding the spot where I'd carved my initials last week. Just 2 letters small, but mine etched where the water met the shore. I didn't need to shout my place anymore. It was here, in the grain of the wood, in the life I was building. I stood the night cool against my skin and let the lake's whisper carry away the last of my doubts. I was home. The lake house smelled of cedar and fresh laundry as I folded towels in the living room sunlight streaming through open windows. It was early summer, and the air carried a warmth that settled into my bones. Nathan was outside mowing the lawn, his steady rhythm a quiet promise of the life we were rebuilding. Liam's sneakers sat by the door left from his last visit, a small sign of the space we'd carved for him. I paused, running my hand over the soft cotton, and felt a calm I hadn't known in months. We'd started counseling regularly every Tuesday evening, sitting across from each other in the study. The first sessions were raw words sharp with old hurts. But Nathan listened, now his hands clasped tight as he spoke of his regrets. "I didn't see you," he'd said last week, his voice low. "I'm learning." I nodded, not fully healed, but open, letting time mend what words couldn't. We planned a vow renewal for next month, nothing grand, just us by the lake, a chance to start clean. I bought a simple white dress, hanging it in the closet where Clara's things once were, and it felt like a quiet victory. Liam came every other weekend, his energy filling the house with a new kind of joy. I'd started teaching him to garden our hands in the dirt as we planted marigolds by the porch. "They'll bloom all summer," I told him, watching his careful fingers pat the soil. He smiled proud, and I saw a bond growing, not forced, but natural, like the roots we were tending. I didn't try to replace anyone. I was just me, and he seemed to like that. We'd sit on the steps after eating popsicles, his chatter about school easing the last of my doubts. Margaret and the neighbors became my backbone, their laughter a constant now. We hosted a barbecue last weekend, the yard full of folding chairs and kids running wild. Rebecca brought her famous potato salad, and we talked late into the night, her legal advice a distant memory, but her friendship steady. The lake glittered behind us, a reminder of why I'd fought for this place. I looked around at the faces who'd stood by me and felt anchored not just to the house, but to the people who made it home. I walked to the mailbox that afternoon, the gravel crunching under my sandals. The lake was calm, its surface a mirror for the sky. I'd started this habit, these short walks, to clear my mind. Each step was a chance to let go, to release the weight of last year's battles. I passed the spot where I'd once sat broken and didn't flinch. That woman was part of me, but she wasn't all of me. I opened the mailbox, found a letter from Hannah, and smiled. She'd moved closer, and we'd been meeting for coffee, rebuilding our own bond. I tucked the letter in my pocket, turned back to the house, and breathed deep, the air clean and light. Back at the house, I set Hannah's letter on the kitchen counter, unopened for now. I wanted to savor the moment, the simple act of knowing she was near. The afternoon stretched out lazy and warm, and I found myself in the backyard, pruning the rose bushes I'd planted last month. The thorns pricked my fingers, but I didn't mind. Each snip felt deliberate, a way to shape something living, something mine. Nathan joined me, handing me a glass of iced tea, and we worked side by side, our silence comfortable, no longer heavy with unspoken fights. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. I thought about the months behind us, the nights I'd spent questioning my worth, my place. I'd stood on the edge of losing myself, letting others' choices define me. But somewhere along the way, I'd learned to draw a line, not just with Clara or Nathan, but with the part of me that bent too easily. I'd always thought strength meant winning, being loud. But now I saw it differently. Strength was in the quiet choices, locking a door, planting a flower, saying no. It was in knowing I could love Nathan, love Liam, and still love myself enough to demand respect. That evening, I sat on the porch swing, the lake a soft shimmer under the dusk. I'd started writing letters to myself, not in the journal, but on loose pages I kept in a tin box. They weren't for anyone else, just promises to the woman I was becoming. You are enough. I wrote last night, the words simple, but heavy. I realized that's what I'd been searching for. Not just a house or a marriage, but the certainty that I could stand alone and still be whole. I'd fought for this place, but the real fight was for that truth, and it was one I'd won. I looked at Nathan, reading inside his glasses, slipping down his nose. Liam's drawings were pinned to the fridge, bright scribbles of boats and trees. The neighbors' voices carried from across the street, planning another gathering. This life pieced together from broken bits was mine. I didn't need it to be flawless, just real. I'd learned that boundaries weren't walls to keep others out. They were roots, grounding me so I could grow without losing myself. That was the gift of this year. Not the house, but the woman I'd found inside it. What's a moment you chose yourself, even when it was hard? I'd love to read your stories in the comments, to know what battles you fought to claim your place. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for listening, for being here with me. Here's to finding our way, step by quiet step.